In 1923, a Pennsylvania farmer drove an oak peg through a mortise joint in a new barn corner post in Lancaster County. The barn is still standing in 2024. His grandson sold the land last spring for $4.2 million. The appraiser wrote a separate line for the barn because the structure outvalued the house. The real estate industry calls these barns impossible to replicate. They are not. The knowledge was removed from American shop classes after 1962. By number 18, you will see what the food industry replaced it with. By number 11, you will see what the banks refused to finance. By number 1, you will see what your great-grandparents knew about wood. Subscribe before this is paywalled too. Number 25. The wooden gutter. In 1908, your grandfather nailed a length of hand-hewn cedar trough along the eaves of a Wisconsin dairy barn for the cost of an afternoon and a pound of cut nails. The trough was cut from a single log on a portable mill for 60 cents. It moved rainwater off a quarter-acre roof into a stone cistern that watered cattle through August. A cedar gutter lasted 40 years. Retailers replaced cedar with vinyl sectional gutters in the 1970s at $3.40 a linear foot. The vinyl warps in 12 summers and ends up at the curb. The cedar trough on that Wisconsin barn is still running water in 2024. The product that lasted 40 years is gone. The replacement is sold everywhere. Number 24. The Barn Star. In 1873, your grandmother's great-uncle painted a 5-point red star on the east-facing gable of a Lehigh County barn the morning after the last frame raising. The star was not decoration. The position marked the barn's age, the family's church, and which mason had cut the foundation stone. Neighbors read it the way a stranger now reads a license plate. The advertising industry stripped that meaning out of the symbol in the 1980s and resold the star as a $48 metal accent at every interstate truck stop from Allentown to Amarillo. Every house now has one. None of them mean anything. The star on the Lehigh County gable still tells the same story. The symbol survived. The literacy did not. Number 23. The cedar shingle roof. In 1894, your great-grandparents split 40,000 cedar shingles by hand over one winter for the New Bank barn in Tioga County. The shingles were nailed in courses of 5 inches to the weather. A cedar roof in good Pennsylvania air ran 90 years without a patch. The insurance industry began surcharging wood shingle policies in 1979 and refused coverage outright by 1991. Asphalt fiberglass replaced cedar at $112 a square. Asphalt fails in 20 years and goes to the dump in 3-ton loads. The Tioga County family stopped insuring the barn in 1993 and put the premium money in a mason jar instead. The roof outlasted 4 insurance companies. The companies are gone. The roof is not. Number 22. The hex sign. In 1851, your grandfather's people painted a 12-point rosette in red, blue, and yellow on the south wall of a Berks County barn to mark the planting calendar. The pigments came from iron oxide and skimmed milk. Each color carried a planting instruction the field hands could read from the road. Federal regulation under the 1938 Agricultural Adjustment Act standardized seed timing through the county extension office and made the sign unnecessary. The rosettes became gift shop merchandise by 1962. Tourists bought 30-inch reproductions for $89 without knowing what they meant. The original Berks County rosette still tracks the same planting week it tracked in 1851. The wall remembers. The extension office does not. Number 21. The lightning rod system. In 1881, an Iowa barn carpenter installed 4 copper-tipped rods on the roof ridge of a new dairy barn in Dubuque County and grounded them through 12 feet of buried copper cable. The system cost the farmer $14.20. A grounded barn never burned. Lightning hit the structure 3 times between 1881 and 1934. and ran straight to the field without scorching a shingle. Zoning laws written in the 1970s required new agricultural structures to use code-approved grounding tied to the main panel, which made standalone rod systems redundant on paper and disappeared them from new builds. The Dubuque barn still has its original 4 copper tips, 3 strikes, 3 intact roofs. 3 reasons the code book is wrong. Number 20. The sliding wagon door. In 1916, your grandmother's father hung a 14-foot oak door on forged iron rollers running a Stanley wagon door track bolted to a chestnut header. The door weighed 320 pounds and slid open with one hand. 2 horses and a loaded hay wagon passed under it without slowing down. The real estate industry rebranded barn doors as Interior Accent Hardware in the 2010s and resold the track at $340 a kit for closet pantries. The track on the 1916 barn still rolls without grease. The new tracks bend under a 60-pound bedroom door. If a closet pantry needs the same hardware that moved a draft horse and a ton of hay, ask why the hardware was downgraded. Then ask who profited. Number 19. The cupola. In 1902, your great-grandparents framed a 4-foot square cupola onto the ridge of an Indiana horse barn with louvered slats on all 4 sides and a copper weather vane on top. The cupola moved hot air out of the hayloft by passive convection and pulled fresh air in through the gable vents. Loft temperature stayed 22 degrees cooler than the outside roof. A modern pole barn skips the cupola and runs an industrial exhaust fan on a 40-amp circuit at $1,140 installed. The fan needs replacement every 9 years and a credit card to finance each new motor. The Indiana cupola still moves air in 2024, with no moving parts and no monthly bill. The free system runs forever. The expensive system runs on debt. Number 18. The hay hood. In 1924, your grandfather extended the front gable of a Vermont dairy barn out 4 feet on heavy timber brackets to shelter a hay track and a steel hay carrier. The carrier ran on a track inside the loft and grabbed a full pitchfork bundle, weighing 600 pounds from a wagon below. 1 man and 1 horse loaded a full mow in an afternoon. The food industry consolidated dairy hauling in the 1970s and shifted loose hay storage to compressed bales delivered by tractor-trailer at $7.20 a bale. The hay hood became architectural decoration in real estate listings and a backdrop for wedding photos. The Vermont track still hangs above the door in 2024, rust-pitted but intact. Steel, oak, and 1 man, that was the operation. First pattern break, look at what we just covered. We covered the gutter that lasted 40 years. We covered the star that meant something. We covered the roof that outlasted 4 insurance companies. We covered the rosette that read the planting calendar. We covered the rod that took the lightning. We covered the door that moved a draft horse. We covered the cupola that moved air for a century. We covered the hay hood that fed a herd in an afternoon. Every feature was a tool. None of them sold a subscription, a service contract, or a refinance. A barn used to be a closed system. The next 9 features are what happened when you walked through the front doors and stepped inside. Number 17. The attached milk house. In 1899, a Wisconsin dairy farmer framed a 10 by 14-foot milk house onto the north wall of a Dane County barn with a concrete floor sloped to a drain and a cold water trough fed by a hillside spring through a galvanized pipe. The water held 8 10-gallon milk cans at 52 degrees until the morning pickup. The cost was $87. School systems taught barnside dairy plumbing through state agricultural high schools until 1969. The programs were cut to fund driver's ed and home economics. The Dane County Milk House still has its original drain and its original spring pipe. The water still runs in 2024. The high school still stands. Neither classroom inside it teaches a boy how to plumb a milk house with gravity. Number 16. The Dutch door. In 1887, your grandmother's mother hung a split horizontal door on the south side of a New York dairy barn, with the upper half opening separately from the lower half. The lower half kept the calves inside and the chickens out. The upper half let in light, breeze, and the conversation of the milk house yard. The door cost the farmer 85 cents in cut nails and one afternoon's work with a hand plane. National retailers reintroduced the Dutch door in 2003 as a $1,190 specialty interior unit for nurseries and home offices. The New York barn door still works on the original strap hinges. The retailers call it a feature. The dairy called it the door. Number 15. The slatted corn crib. In 1911, your great-grandparents built a 14-foot tall corn crib on stone piers behind an Ohio barn with 1x3 oak slats, spaced exactly 7/8 of an inch apart. The gap dried 600 bushels of ear corn through the winter wind without rotting and let no rat through the wall. The crib lost less than 2% of the harvest in storage. The advertising industry began selling sealed metal grain bins in the 1960s, with promotional photography in farm journals and a $2,400 price tag. The bins required electric augers, moisture meters, and contracts with the feed mill. The Ohio crib still stands behind the barn in 2024, with the original slats. 7/8 of an inch. The right gap. The same gap that worked in 1911. Number 14. The granary bin. In 1879, your grandfather's father lined the interior of a Minnesota barn, granary with tight tongue and groove yellow pine planks, set vertically and capped with a tin sheet at the bottom edge. The bin held 300 bushels of wheat without losing a kernel to mice. The seal lasted 70 years on the original lumber. Insurance industry guidelines in the 1980s began requiring on-farm grain storage to meet sealed metal commercial standards or lose coverage on stored crop value. The pine bin was decertified by 1987. Farmers ripped out the planks and installed steel hopper bins at $11,000 each. The Minnesota granary still has the original tin cap on the floor of an empty room. If your barn has a wood-lined granary, do not rip it out. Patch it. Refill it. Number 13. The attached root cellar. In 1885, your grandmother's grandfather dug a stone-lined root cellar 12 feet into the slope behind a Connecticut bank barn and capped it with the barn floor itself. Inside, temperature stayed between 38 and 44 degrees all winter without electricity. The cellar held 600 pounds of potatoes, 4 bushels of apples, and 100 jars of canned tomatoes. Federal regulation under the 1973 amendments to the National Electrical Code required permanent food storage rooms in agricultural buildings to be wired with mechanical refrigeration backup if used commercially. The cellar was reclassified as non-commercial and abandoned. The Connecticut family now runs an electric chest freezer in the same spot at $214 a year in electricity. The free cellar is illegal to sell from. The plug-in freezer is approved. Number 12. The tack room. In 1913, a Kentucky barn carpenter framed a 10 by 12 foot tack room into the corner of a Bourbon County horse barn with cedar-lined walls, 12 oak harness pegs, a saddle rack made from a single black walnut plank, and a small cast-iron stove vented through the roof. The room held 32 pieces of leather rigging for 4 working teams. The leather lasted 50 years inside that room. Zoning laws written in the 1990s reclassified heated outbuildings as accessory dwelling units and triggered permit fees of $1,800 per structure. New barns stopped installing tack rooms to avoid the reclassification. The Bourbon County tack room still has its original stove and its original pegs. Leather, cedar, walnut, iron. A room built for harness. A room nobody builds now. Number 11. The threshing floor. In 1862, Your great-grandparents laid a 20-foot center alley in a Pennsylvania barn from 4-inch thick white oak planks pegged into oak sleepers below. The floor was flat enough to thresh wheat with hand flails and tight enough to lose no grain through the seams. 3 men threshed 60 bushels in a long afternoon and swept the floor clean by lantern light. The banks introduced equipment loans in the 1950s and underwrote combine harvesters at $14,000 each, which moved threshing out of the barn and into the field. Threshing floors stopped being built by 1958. The Pennsylvania floor is still laid in original oak in 2024. The combines were sold for scrap inside 30 years. One floor outlived the entire fleet that replaced it. Number 10. The wooden stanchion. In 1993, your grandfather installed 40 hand-built oak stanchions in a Wisconsin dairy barn for less than $400 each in milled lumber. Each stanchion held a single cow at the feed manger with a smooth pivoting yoke around her neck. The cow walked herself in and walked herself out twice a day. The food industry shifted dairying to freestall confinement systems in the 1980s, with steel headlocks at $340 per cow and concrete slatted floors graded for manure scrape. The cows stopped walking themselves anywhere. The Wisconsin barn still has its 40 oak stanchions, worn smooth by 40 years of cow throats. 40 cows, 40 stanchions, 40 years. The math was the operation. Second pattern, break, look at the pattern under the pattern. Every feature on this list was a closed loop. Every feature paid for itself once, and then never again. Every feature replaced no labor with debt. Every feature stored value inside the structure instead of in a bank ledger. Every feature was owned the day it was nailed in place. Every feature now has a paid replacement. The replacement does the same job worse, charges a monthly fee, and ends in a landfill. The barn was not just a building. The barn was a savings account that produced its own interest. The last 9 features are the structural bones that made that account possible. Without these last 9, the first 16 do not stand up. Number 9. The full horse box stall. In 1898, your grandmother's grandfather built 6 12 by 12 foot box stalls into a Virginia carriage barn with tongue and groove yellow pine walls running floor to ceiling and a hinged top door for ventilation. Each stall held 1 draft horse with room to lie down full length. The lumber cost $26 a stall. The advertising industry began promoting tie stalls and slip stalls through trade publications in the 1950s at half the lumber and a third of the labor. 6 box stalls collapsed into 12 narrow tie stalls. The horses stopped lying down. The Virginia carriage barn still has all 6 original box stalls with the original top doors. 12 by 12 feet, room to lie down. The number that matters. Number 8. The built-in feed trough. In 1907, your great-grandparents poured a continuous concrete feed trough 32 feet long down the center alley of an Ohio dairy barn at $1.40 a running foot. The trough fed 40 cows from 1 wheelbarrow load of silage. The concrete carried a half-inch lip on both sides to keep feed inside and a slight slope for cleaning. The real estate industry began rebranding old dairy barns as event venues in the 2000s and demolishing the troughs to clear the floor for tables. Demolition cost $4,200 per barn. The Ohio trough was saved because the family refused to sign the renovation contract. If your family owns a barn with a built-in concrete trough, do not let it be removed. The trough is the receipt. Number 7. The lean-to pigsty. In 1889, your grandfather's uncle framed a 12-foot deep shed roof lean-to onto the north wall of a Tennessee barn for $18 in milled hemlock and 1 ton of rubble stone. The lean-to housed 8 feeder hogs through the winter and fattened them on barn floor sweepings, soured milk, and table scraps. Each hog gained 180 pounds on near zero cash cost. The credit card companies financed industrial hog confinement in the 1990s through small farmer revolving accounts at 22% interest. The lean-to sty was abandoned for indoor finished feeder pigs purchased on revolving credit. The Tennessee lean-to still leans against the barn wall in 2024. Hemlock, rubble, table scraps. The hogs got fat. The card never came. Number 6. The bank barn into the hillside. In 1842, a German immigrant family in Maryland cut a hillside to set the lower stable level at ground access on the downhill side and the upper threshing floor at ground access on the uphill side. One barn served 2 grade levels through one set of doors on each side. The earth banked against the lower wall held stable temperature between 40 and 58 degrees all year without insulation. The insurance industry classified bank barns as below-grade structures in the 2000s and increased premiums by 41% due to flood zone redefinitions. New construction stopped. The 1842 Maryland barn is still standing in 2024 on the original cut. Insurance redefined a hillside as a flood. The hillside did not move. Number 5. The Pennsylvania forebay. In 1838, your grandmother's people framed a 6-foot cantilevered overhang on the downhill side of a Berks County bank barn to shelter the stable doorway from rain and snow. The forebay was supported by no posts. Heavy chestnut beams carried the full load back into the barn frame. Cattle and horses stayed dry, walking in and out in any weather. Federal regulation under the 1990 Farm Building Code revisions disallowed unsupported cantilevers over 6 feet on agricultural structures without engineered steel reinforcement. The forebay disappeared from new builds. The 1838 Berks County overhang still hangs in 2024 on the original chestnut. No posts, no steel, no code stamp. The barn does not need them. Number 4. The haymow. In 1876, your great-grandparents framed the upper level of a New Hampshire barn as a single open loft 32 feet wide, 48 feet long, and 22 feet tall at the ridge. The mow held 40 tons of loose hay cut from the home meadow. The hay was forked in through the peak door, settled on its own weight, and stayed dry under the cedar roof. National retailers shifted hay storage to plastic-wrapped round bales stored outdoors on field pallets in the 1990s at $48 a bale. Round bales rot from the bottom up in the first wet season. The New Hampshire mow still smells like cured grass in 2024 on the original chestnut floorboards. The loose hay outlasted the structure that wrapped it. The wrapped hay outlasts nothing. Number 3. The dry stacked stone foundation. In 1854, your grandfather's grandfather laid a 4-foot-tall fieldstone foundation under a Vermont barn without mortar, fitting each stone by eye to the one below it. The mason was paid $1.80 a perch of stone for a week's work. The foundation has not settled in 170 years. The banks refused to underwrite construction loans on dry-laid stone foundations beginning in the 1960s and required poured concrete footings to release funds. New barns stopped sitting on stone. The Vermont Foundation still carries the same load in 2024, without a single crack across the perimeter. A mason, by eye, by hand, without mortar, without a loan. The barn is still up. The bank has changed names 6 times. Number 2. The connected silo. In 1882, the University of Wisconsin agronomist Franklin King published the first specifications for a 50-foot tile silo connected directly to the side of a dairy barn for fermented corn storage. By 1910, your grandmother's father had built one in Walworth County for $290 in glazed clay tile and 3 weeks of labor. The silo stored 90 tons of silage and fed 40 cows through the winter. The food industry shifted silage to bunker pits and plastic-wrapped bag systems in the 1990s at $14,000 per bunker pour. The Wisconsin tile silo still stands beside the barn in 2024, with the original chute. If your family barn still has a tile silo attached, do not tear it down. Repoint the tile. Replace the doors. Use it. Number 1. The hand-hewn timber frame. In 1791, your great-grandparents' people felled a stand of white oak in Bucks County, hewed the logs square with a broad axe on shaving horses, cut mortise and tenon joints with a wooden mallet and an iron chisel, and pegged the joints with riven oak trunnions driven through 1 3/4-inch bored holes. The frame went up in one day with 60 neighbors and a pot of cider. The cost was $0 in cash. School systems removed timber framing from agricultural and industrial arts curricula nationwide between 1957 and 1973. The trade was gone in 2 generations. The 1791 frame in Bucks County is still standing in 2024 on the same oak pegs. No nails, no screws, no fasteners on the market today. The barn that schools forgot how to build. Here is my challenge. The pattern under the pattern is simple to name. Closed loops, own tools, local materials. Those 3 rules built every feature on this list. A barn built on those rules paid for itself in 20 years and stood for 170. A barn financed, insured, and refurbished on the credit card model lasts 12. You have 2 choices now. You can keep paying monthly fees for systems your great-grandparents owned outright. Or you can walk out behind the next old barn you see this week, find one feature on this list still standing, and learn how it was built before the man who knows is buried. One feature, one photograph, one question to one old farmer. Start there.